Recording in progress. What is happening, everybody? Welcome back to the Bucher's Batch of Boys podcast with me, your lovely host, Nick Bucher, my partner, Jared, Kyle Jordan. Kyle, how you doing?
How's it going, Nick? Good to see you. Looking
Good to
good.
see you, buddy. I'm sure everybody, if you haven't already noticed, you are noticing as I say it now, we are on a different platform. Colin could not handle the quickness with which our podcast grew. Jerry Lee was really spreading the good word about us, and it got out of hand, so we have migrated. We are on Zoom. We may be on YouTube, but for now, we're on Zoom. A fun feature of this is one of those special ones for you guys. You can see me and Kyle right now, so you can see our brains working as we give you awesome analysis. Moving forward, probably beginning with the next pod we do, we're going to have guests on with us, since a lot of you have asked to join. Moving forward, though, we will never be on video again. You will not see us. You will not know what we're doing. But it's a mandatory requirement to be a guest. You must be on video the entire time, just you. So
It's only
make sure you're
fair.
comfortable with that. Yeah, exactly. Like we're opening our lives up and our pods up, so you must open your face up to us while we're speaking.
We're opening
But
our homes to you. I mean,
yeah, you're
I'm
literally in our houses right now.
I'm broadcasting here from the man cave. Nick is in Arizona. I mean, he's got a Suns hat and sun on his face too. So really
Suns
starting
Nation,
to
baby.
yeah.
I'm a born and raised Arizonian, as everybody in this league knows. I did not just hop on the bandwagon a month and a half ago and Kevin Durant got traded here as I moved.
He followed you.
Kevin Durant came after me, so actually he followed me. But we have a great show for you guys tonight. What we're going to do, we're going to talk first about the draft recap at a higher level. We're probably going to also, in a separate pod, probably the first guest one, cover all of your teams a little bit, give everybody some analysis. But tonight, we're going to run down some of our favorite picks from the draft we just had last week, some of our most questionable picks, some overall good strategies we saw, and just some other general takeaways. So this is going to be one where you're going to hear all the things we liked and didn't like a lot. I have some mailbag tonight again. We got some more mail. And then we're going to play a game that I'm going to get to show you guys. Kyle is graciously going to play against himself in the first game. But moving forward, it's going to be blind resumes, guess the player, and Kyle will play against whoever guests each week.
We're taking challengers.
And then we'll end up with news, whatever else we didn't hit that we want to talk about. We also always reserve the right to just talk about whatever we want midway through it at the end. But that is what you're going to hear first.
Also, if we get another case of, just Russian bots taking over our
If Jari
cast,
Lee gets in here again.
we're just not going to finish the podcast again. So that's always a possibility.
Right now, this room is literally invite only, but I'm not going to be shocked. It's like 50-50 if Jari Lee just gets in anyway and takes over.
Yeah, it's just the next up and coming thing. So I get it.
Which is
Everyone
fine if Jari's video is on.
Yeah. Oh, that would be a blessing.
But anyway, we're going to get into it. We're going to get started. I'm going to start out. I'm going to throw it to Kyle because we're going to alternate here. Kyle, draft was great. Do you have any overarching thoughts before we talk about some of our favorite buys? Anything you want to say, like generally about the draft? How do you feel your team came out? We won't talk a ton about your team specifically, but just you feel like you did a good job? Are you happy with how it went?
Yeah, I thought the draft was interesting. I'm not, in love with my draft personally, and I won't get into that too much. I think there's always a common trait in auction drafts like this where early on, of course, you don't exactly know what the status quo is, right? So everyone's putting out feelers. I tend to see players go a little bit cheaper than they typically should, especially early on, really at every level. I think we'll touch on this a little bit, but Griffin took a really interesting strategy, just jumping up to what he thought the fair value was for one of the top players. We'll see how that paid off. I think at the time I thought it was a bit aggressive, but looking back on it now, I think it was pretty interesting. And we'll get into that in more detail, but I think that's the big takeaway. Some of the high end players, what really should their value be? What is their value in this draft? I think that was the main, point of thought, and typically it is in auction drafts.
For sure. I agree with you. I think Griffin, when he was doing his strategy in real time, I was like, this is interesting. And now it's over. I'm like, that was ridiculously dumb. So just like that is the interesting difference you have once the draft is over versus once it's going on. And I'm joking, of course, Griffin. I think you probably did a pretty good job. I think what Kyle was getting on is something I agree with, and I've noticed it the last like 3 or 4 years in this league's drafts, is whenever there's a tier of players that are semi-similar, like Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, Jose Ramirez, a lot of those top blue chipper guys, I think because there are so many of them still out there, there's still like 4 of them left. If you see one go for a buck more than you think he should, you usually don't buy. But then you end up having something like with Mike Trout in this league, where I think just because he was the last true elite tier first round caliber hitter, he went for like almost as much as anybody, if not the most. I don't remember what his exact cost was. He went for a lot of money though.
Yeah,
Which is not a bad buy either, by the way. Get your dudes, because otherwise you end up being me 3 years ago. I think I paid like $35 for goddamn the dude in the White Sox first baseman. What's his name? Andrew Vaughn.
Vaughn.
He was my favorite sleeper. I was like, I'm gonna wait. Not going to pay a buck over for Mookie Betts that year. Andrew Vaughn paid like 31 bucks. He wasn't even keepable. So there is a lot of reason to get your secure guys, pay whatever it costs, even if it's a little bit over to get someone in the early part of it, which I think Griffin did a good job of.
Yeah, so like Nick said, in another episode, we're going to do a deep dive. Today, we're really just highlighting a couple of picks that we especially loved.
All right. So I'm going to get started in the early part of the auction. One of the first 10 guys we'd go off, I think Aaron Nola was a really solid buy. We talked a little bit in the very first pod we did about the fact that there were not a ton of elite starters out there, I didn't think, and there definitely weren't. And there's plenty of ones after that who went for higher prices than that, who are as good or better than, or as good or worse than Nola. And I think just because, like we said earlier already tonight, Nola was one of the first guys to go off at starting pitcher. I think he was a great value at 44.
Yeah, so
So good
that's a
job to
Griffin
right.
at $44. Yep. So
we talked too much about Griffin, dude. Sorry, Griffin. I'm tired of talking about you. All right, you had Kyle. Who'd you like?
I'll jump on the Griffin bandwagon and then
Ew.
make one other point. So I thought it was really smart. Griff had a lot of money, and so he clearly went in knowing that he wanted some of that top end talent. I think Nola is one where Nola went at a great price. So that's maybe the steal of the draft. If you look at Castillo, who went north of $60, Nola for 44 is fantastic. And you never know what you're going to get with starting pitchers. Like I said, the beginning of the draft, you kind of have to calibrate to what everyone else is doing. But with that said, Griffin also got Juan Soto for 58. I think there were a couple of injury concerns with the oblique, and it turns out, at least where we are currently, looks pretty good. I think, last time he played, he looked great. I think all reports are pointing to opening day looking perfectly clear, no issues for him. And then Jose Ramirez is the third big guy that Griffin picked up at $71. That's actually one I wanted to call out. At the time, I think we were all shaking our heads and just, scratching our heads. Like, what are we doing? Just jumping straight to $71. Very bold move. I still think it was a little bit pricey, but I think it clearly worked, right? He got who he wanted. Trout went for 70, which I think is fine. Nothing wrong with that. He was the last in his tier. But yeah, I think I just wanted to call out those three picks. I think they're really good. And I promise I do have some others to highlight that aren't on Griffin's team.
Yeah, we are literally done with you, Griffin. So that's all you're getting today. You can stop listening. I think what Kyle said, I just want to add to you real quick. I agree. I think Jose Ramirez, if Jose Ramirez had gone last of the first round caliber hitters like Trout did, I think he was the last one. That's why he went for so much. Ramirez probably goes for over 85. I think that probably would have happened. So I think it's fine too. I think though right along, they went in 1, 2, 3 order, 8, 9, 10 in the draft. Juan Soto you already called out. I think Freddie Freeman for 59 by you was pretty solid. I think he ended up being a pretty good value relative to what the other blue chippers went for. And Mookie Betts to Team Missigman. I was in on him. Good job, Missigman. I think Mookie Betts for 58 was another really good buy. Not by like an amazing value, but again, getting a blue chip guy when there's only so many of them out there is worth doing, even if it is $5 to $10 over your projection, just because it's not fun to have all this money at the end when you're spending $30 on the Andrew Vaughn equivalents. So good job to all three of you there. My next one I'll highlight is going to be, it was fairly early in the draft, which is why I think it's so impressive, because I think it's hard to get the best values on anybody other than blue chippers early in the draft, just because everybody has money. You get price enforced very often. But somehow we all fell asleep at the wheel a little bit. I think the 20th guy off the board, Javi Baez, good job, Charlie Brown. I think getting him for $7, it's not going to win you your league probably this year. I don't think it's going to be the reason you win this, but I would have paid probably 15 for him. And honestly, I just should have. I'm not sure why I didn't get in on him more. That was one of the ones I regretted immediately. And I think probably as other shortstops went off, probably everybody agreed, just because this is a guy who's unspectacular, but he's pretty solid. He plays in the middle infield, gives you good shortstop stuff, power, steals. And I think just because he was not going in his tier, he's similar to what we talked about where Aaron Nola being the first elite starting pitcher to go, just being the first middling tier, like, I don't know, round 10 equivalent shortstop to go. Nobody wanted to act yet because there's so many other ones left. So good job by Charlie to see it, snake him out there.
Yeah, well said, Nick. You're not a complete clown, Charlie Brown. So on to the next one. We've got Mark, Sparky Marky. I'd like to call out a couple of good picks. I think Mark really focused on his starting pitchers in this draft. And, we'll get into this when we do the deep dive. He had some blue chip starters, but I'd like to call out a guy who is a little bit cheaper, Charlie Morton for $13. Old man Morton. I think that's actually a steal. I think, especially in a league that looks at wins, I think sometimes as a group we undervalue that. And I think $13 I personally, well, I now have a lot of I've been bitten by the injury bug, so I'm actually in need of starting pitchers now. But at the time, wasn't really focused too much on it, and I regret it. So I think a great buy, Charlie more than $13.
I'll segue that right into, I think, great job, McTaggart. The $14 Clayton Kershaw I thought was awesome because Kershaw at the time he came off was the best starting pitcher left. I wanted to be in on him just the where I was financially. I couldn't be much higher than about $10. I didn't think it was realistic then, but I thought he would probably go for in the mid to high 20s. I mean, Kershaw might get hurt. Kershaw's like DeGrom light, I feel like. But man, I don't see many scenarios where Kershaw pitches and he's not really damn good. So I think it's an amazing gamble as far as there's a ton of upside there, not much downside. And it's just a good job of being disciplined. Because I think if you don't do what Griffin did, where you spend all your money early and become the $1 bid guy at the end, doing something like that where you really do hold off, kind of committing to that also is kind of the way to go. And I think McTaggart did that a couple of different places. Similarly to the Kershaw value, I feel like $7 Kalenic pretty late in the draft for Brad. Nice job, Brad. I wanted Kalenic. I think $7 is super reasonable. Similar to Javi Baez, it's something where after the fact I was like, should have gone an extra buck there. It's one of those things where it was the last couple picks for me. I was trying to hold off for somebody else, but I remember in the moment saying to myself, that's a great buy. And the
Yep.
more I look at the draft after the fact, Kalenic, post type, great spring, still very young. I think it's a great buy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the best spring out of pretty much any player, right? He's been
Borderline,
on
yeah. He
fire.
was incredible.
Yeah. So good buy there. One more just to hop on with what you said on Brendan. I really liked the $4 Winker snag. Um, I think that's a great value. Similarly, I think Winker is one of my favorites to bounce back this year. I think moving to Milwaukee, I think it'll just lead to a really good year. And I think he's undervalued and people are forgetting what he did 2 years ago. So assuming he can stay healthy, let's see a interesting year for a $4 Winker. With that said, Nick, did you have any other positives you wanted to highlight, or did you want to pivot to some of the guys who are a little bit
Yep,
pricey?
I got like two or three more positives I'll give you, and then we can move on to some of the more questionable ones. Real
Let's
quick
do
though
it.
with Winker, I didn't initially have him either. This is a great one by Kyle because the more I think about it, the more I realize that is a great value. Winker has been very useful in the past, and it's hard to overstate how good it is to go from one of the worst ballparks for lefties in Safeco or whatever it's called now in Seattle. I don't believe it's Safeco anymore; it's something else. But whatever it is, it's a terrible park for lefties. Moving to Milwaukee, which is one of the best for lefties, so that is a really solid move. Very low risk there. Great buy at the end. I'm not shocked Kyle didn't say these, so I will say my last ones, which are literally almost all your dudes. Kyle, good job. Kyle stole a lot of my guys I wanted. I'm not surprised we have similar guys we liked, but I loved, and I tried to get him to buy up. I tried to do it early on, the Gabriel Moreno one for $2. I nominated him, already owning a catcher, thinking, oh, good, there's still like five guys you need a catcher. He'll go for too much because he's made the opening day roster. You guys were all asleep at the wheel and let Kyle have a top prospect for $2. Great job there. Similarly, I think Jose Altuve for $18. A lot of times in this league, in my opinion, the best keepers end up being these guys who are borderline blue chip players, but they're not like fresh, hot young rookies. So they don't go for too much money. They're kind of past their peak guys, kind of like a lighter version or a heavier version, Altuve is of what Kalenic could be, where it's somebody who you get for a decent value who's not a young, flashy rookie, and he ends up being a great value for a while. That's usually the best keepers, I think. Altuve likely will be a good keeper for you after this year. I think he was a good buy where you got him. 15 for Volpe. I can't believe Volpe went for sub 20. I know it's like even easier now to say that because they've said he's making the opening roster, but at main events, like main event drafts and NFBC, even on Thursday, he was going in the top 100. So, I mean, that's not even a keeper format. This is a good prospect, borderline great prospect, one of the blue chip prospects for $15. I mean, he is going to be someone you probably want to keep. And I'm the one who bid it for 14. I can't believe he went for 15. So great job there, Kyle. All three of those broke my heart, as did my good buddy Miguel Vargas. I know 18 is not quite as good a value, but I think there's still plenty of reason he could be a good keeper for you. He's somebody I wish I held after the draft last year. It's not fun to hear us gush over each other's teams, so we won't talk too much more about Kyle's team, but I want to make sure I said all of those because I had a lot of good keepers from your team specifically. Let's see. Do I have anybody from
Thank
anybody
you.
else's team? Oh, one other one. I do have one more. Just guys said but the last one. Dom. We were talking about Mike Soroka in the very first pod. Mike Soroka for $1 is a great buy. If I
It's
had
really
money
good.
left to go to two, I didn't have money left to go to two when you put him up there. He's going to be very good value. $1 for Mike Soroka is awesome. This
Yep.
is going to be the Mike Soroka pod generally. I feel like just because that was our first one, and we're talking about him again now. That was a really good buy. Nice job at $1 there.
Also saved a little bit of cash last minute there. Not too shabby.
Yeah, yeah, really putting me through the ringer, testing my pliability to drop him and give you your money back like 4 minutes before the draft started.
Yeah, a real Goodell over here, a real
He
owner's
frazzled me. He
commish.
frazzled me. Yeah. But yeah, let's move on though, Kyle. Give me one of your first guys, and we won't talk a ton. We don't have as many negatives because candidly, there weren't that many terrible buys. There were probably no terrible buys. That's a little mean, but there were no questionable ones in the same way. There were a lot of good ones, not a ton of questionable ones. But who was questionable, you thought?
I only have two to call out, and I know one of them we share. I think we both talked, pre-show. But Ryan McMahon, I think for $22, I think Zach has a really good team. Obviously, when you looked through at each of the players he picked, he was drafting on need. So McMahon is there. He has a lot of different position eligibility, so it definitely fills the role. But I think at the end of the day, $22 is a lot. I know some of the analysts are really high on McMahon this year. I think Eno Saris is calling a big, career year for McMahon, but I don't know. I'm not sure if I really believe in the hype. I think he's obviously very serviceable. Great guy to have on your roster, but $22 is a lot.
I agree. I would venture to guess. I have not talked to Zach, so Zach, please feel free to reach out in the comments in the mailbag here. I literally in the time was waiting to see if Zach would message because I was wondering if Zach meant to bid 2 to start him out, just because it was late in the game too, and just had accidentally said 22, like a glitch or something like that. So maybe not. Maybe Zach was just like, I'm gonna get my guy. I got money left. But I'd be curious because I think that was probably the most surprising one to me, which is gonna be hilarious, by the way, when Ryan McMahon hits 300 this year with 35 home runs and he's a keeper too. Like it's gonna be pretty funny.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me on Conforto, actually. So I didn't really want him that much. I think I got him for $5, which is fine. He was really early on. I just hit +1.
He was
And for
literally the
whatever
first player.
reason, yeah, and for whatever reason, it was just like from $1 to 5. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I get Conforto now.
Like you're with Zach then. Get your guys at all
Yep.
costs. Makes sense.
Right.
I think one of the ones I'll hit on then. So Kyle briefly touched on it. I think Nola was incredible at 44, but I think similar to like the Mike Trout phenomenon where he went for the most, I think, of anybody because he was the last blue chip hitter. I think the reason Luis Castillo went for as high as he went is it probably in most people's opinion at the time, he was the last true blue chip ace. And it just makes guys like Nola that much more impressive as a buy in my mind because getting $63 Luis Castillo was incredible last year, and he probably will be very good this year. But it's just a situation where I think 3 or 4 guys were looking at him at the end of the tier saying, I got to get one though. I got to get one of those aces. There's only so many aces. They're already all gone. I got to pay whatever it costs now. So I don't think it was even bad you necessarily bought him, Brad, but I do think he highlights sort of the concept generally I'm trying to talk about tonight, which is it doesn't always pay to wait till the end of the tier. Discipline doesn't always work when you know you definitely want one of those guys. So
Yeah.
I didn't love him at 63.
As a rule, I love waiting until the end of the tier in Snake, but in an auction format, it's less rewarding. It's harder because you're trying to figure out how everyone else is valuing, the available players. And then it's even more complicated given the keeper pool that we have. So there's efficiency, we're capturing value and there's more money out there. So it's a fun, dual factor thing to play around with. But let me hop in on one that I didn't like, and it's actually one of my guys. So for pretty much the whole offseason, I've been infatuated with Lars Nootbaar.
Oh,
And
because he
for
was on
whatever
Team
reason,
Japan. You were rooting for Japan, right? In the WBC.
I was USA all the way, but it was definitely a really fun thing to watch. And maybe we'll touch on the WBC a little bit. But Lars
We will.
Nootbaar, let's see if I can share my screen really quick because, like,
You
oh,
think he's bad now?
it's not working. Anyway,
You want me to share my screen with him up?
no, it's
Well, you
fine.
go ahead. You just go ahead. Yeah.
Basically, I was just completely infatuated with Lars Nootbaar, but I drafted him for $23. I think that's really pricey. I think early on, it's just someone who I thought only I knew about, and then sure enough, he just continued to climb ADP. And at the end of the day, I think it's good to get your guys, but I do kind of regret getting him at that price tag. It's also just one of those things where I actually had kind of a Griffin strategy going into the draft. I wanted to get at least 2 or 3 of those very top level blue chips. I had a lot of money myself, and it just didn't go my way. Mookie, Soto off the board, and then I knew I was going to get Trout, and then he went for $70. So
Exactly.
it's just one of those things where you have a little bit more money left than you planned on.
And I think one of the few downsides up for my last one, I'll say, is we talked about the benefit of you're in control. Like if you're Griffin, you buy your guys early, you have sort of set the tone for what they should cost. That can be nice. But I think also then sometimes you get yourself in a lull where you don't buy anybody for like an hour and you kind of pass out and forget what's going on. So I think Griffin did that. He also is one of the ones I think is a really bad buy, which is Reese Hoskins for 11. Reese Hoskins had gotten hurt the morning of our draft. Charlie cut him that morning. And 15 minutes into our draft, it was announced he had gotten, or it was confirmed that his ACL had been torn. 15 minutes after that announcement, though, is when Griffin bought him. So if Griffin had not been asleep at the wheel on autopilot, he may have known that and not spent $11 on a guy who's not going to play and not immediately cut him afterwards. So again, we can't only praise you, Griffin. That was a weird buy. Next time, pay attention. Let's see. I think that's all the ones I had that I did not enjoy.
Yeah, let's skip over to the mailbag. What do you
Yeah, we
say?
do have mailbag this week. So give me 1 sec to pull it up on my phone. I'm going to be speaking to you through my audio, though. Hopefully it comes out for you guys really clearly. But this is from Team Dom French. So let me know what you
Yeah,
guys
Nick,
think.
we should probably call out the email address too.
Yeah, okay. So reminder for everybody, if you want to get heard, email us at batch12 verizon.net. Again, batch12 at verizon.net. Send us your questions. So here's Dom French's incredible message to us that we will take the time to answer.
What's up, fellas? Long-time listener, first-time caller, huge fan of the pod. One thing I was curious about with fantasy this year is like how the rule changes on shifts and pace of play are going to affect fantasy. So I was wondering, which players do you guys think we might see, like who maybe weren't as valuable, like in times past because of shifts or whatever, who might be more valuable this year, and which players that you think may have benefit off like stuff like shifts and stuff, and might regress a little bit this year. Thanks.
We love you too, Dom. Thanks for calling in. Kyle, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so just two immediate names that come to mind. I think Corey Seager and Rowdy Tellez are two of the largest beneficiaries of the ship change. I think, Nick, you said it pre-show. I think any lefty is going to benefit. I think there's a lot to that. I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Corey Seager lost the most hits in baseball last year. A lot of just big, generally slower left-handed hitters probably are going to be the biggest beneficiaries, guys who put the ball in play. A lot of slower right-handed hitters, probably slower hitters in general, get the most out of this. Anthony Rizzo's another big lefty. He'll probably get a lot of help out of this. I think, though, a point that I want to make sure I share is generally when I think about this going into the draft, I think there are less hitters it deeply affects as opposed to more pitchers it deeply affects. And what I mean by that is, like Corey Seager has less control over his batted ball events than like Marcus Stroman does, in the sense that Marcus Stroman gets a lot of ground balls. I'm not picking on him specifically. I think he was a great buy actually for a couple bucks in our auction, but he's someone who gets a lot of ground balls. And because he gets so many ground balls and there's less shift ability now, I think he is more likely than the average pitcher in a significant way to have a higher ERA this year, just because he has a higher percentage of balls on the ground and he has a lot of ground balls as opposed to Corey Seager, who's going to probably put 300 balls in play all year, 400 balls in play all year, and probably might gain 15 to 20 hits. I think Stroman loses more than that. So I think pitchers like Stroman, who have a high ground ball rate, probably stand to lose more. Similarly, pitchers, I'm trying to think of good examples, like Justin Verlander's a blue chip one. He's a really good example of this. He gets a ton of fly balls and not well hit fly balls. So I don't think he's necessarily in danger the way someone who gets a lot of ground balls would be. So what I did personally, I can share it now the draft is over, is I sunk down in my values, some of the left-handed, or I raised some left-handed hitters. I dropped some of the pitchers who get a lot of ground balls, and I slightly bumped up pitchers who have fly balls and poorly struck fly balls, just because I don't think they're going to get hit as hard. Hope we helped you out there, Dom.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Nick. And Dom, thank you so much for calling in. I really look forward to hearing some more mailbags next week.
Yeah, and actually, it'd be fine with me if it's just only Dom. That's good. I like hearing from Dom.
Yeah, now that you say that, it might be better if we just do mailbag through Dom. Maybe
Everybody
Dom
send your mailbag to Dom, and Dom will call in with the mailbag, because I think it's best that Dom gives them to us.
Agreed.
But without
right.
further ado, then we're going to migrate ourselves now into it. You want to do one, Kyle? You want to do two? Let's do one and see how we feel. And then if it's super fun, I'll give you one of my. I have a couple ready for you. I can do two. But we're going to play guess the player.
Sounds great. I'm
we'll
going to embarrass. I'm
no,
going to embarrass myself out here.
Easily.
All right.
Let me see. I'm going to do one on. So the players I have for this, I had prepared for our pod that Jari Lee cut short last week. So these are guys that were already drafted. So that's a hint for you. It's somebody that somebody already had on their team as a keeper before the draft.
Okay.
So I will do this one. So here is a player last season where this player did not have 30 home runs or more was 2014. Now, the only footnote there is that's excluding the COVID season.
You said the last time they did have 30 home runs?
They did not. So since 2014, I guess the easier way to phrase this is since 2014, they've not had a single year with less than 30 home runs besides COVID because it was 60 games.
Oh, what?
So like 7 straight years basically of 30 plus, minimum 30.
Oh, is it
Pretty
Kyle
consistent
Schwarber?
player. Good guess. It is not.
Okay.
I think I'll limit you to one guess per clue.
Oh,
Or actually, I don't know. I'm literally making them. You want to take a second guess or you want to move on?
I'll take another hint.
Okay. Next hint. The last season where this guy played in fewer than 148 games, so he's played in 148 or more every year besides COVID, was also 2014.
Jesus.
So it's somebody who's not super young, somebody who's very durable, and somebody with a lot of power who is consistent.
Paul Goldschmidt.
Good guess, but no. That is a good guess, actually. I think Goldschmidt has a lot of those qualifiers.
Yeah.
So similarly, again, since 2014, this player has not once had fewer than 103 RBIs besides the COVID year.
Okay.
This is a pretty solid player.
Yeah. Well, 2014, a lot of the guys that come to mind are a little bit younger. So, like, Jordan was a great keep, but I don't think he's been playing quite that long, right?
Nope.
Yeah, I'm kind of stumped.
I got you. Those first three I don't think are as helpful as the next couple are going to get more helpful. And that's sort of this tone of all of these is after the first few, I make them a little bit more helpful for you. So the next one is this player has also won 10 consecutive gold gloves at third base going into this season. So 10 straight years they've been the gold glove third baseman in one of the leagues.
Yeah, so I think this is where our guests are going to be really excited to see I will fail in many of these challenges because I don't know a lot about baseball. I just like looking at a lot of the stats. So in terms of Gold Glove, defensive performance, I basically don't know. Like I was a big Dansby Swanson holder for a little bit, just traded him away. We'll touch on that later. But I just recently learned he was pretty good on defense. I wasn't really clued in on that. So yeah, third base. I'm embarrassed to say I do not know.
I gotcha. So my last one, here's your final clue. If you don't get after this one, it should hopefully help. If it doesn't, I'll just let you know who it is. So this player started going into the draft. He was one of Eric's players, and he was 31 years old.
Oh, Manny Machado.
Nolan Arenado.
Oh, okay. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I mean, no, Machado's a good guess. Actually, Machado's also had a ton of gold gloves.
Yeah.
Arenado's fun. You want to do another one? Or you want to call out there? We can talk about the trades.
No, it's a good one. I feel like
I picked him on purpose for this. Now, yeah.
Now that he's on my team, I wasn't really considering him.
That's why I thought he'd be a good first one to do. Yeah,
that's a good one. Yeah, let's do one more. I need to redeem myself. Yeah,
I bet you'll get this one on the first try.
All right.
So starting in 2019, so back, let's see, it's 2023, 4 years ago. This person's batting average has dropped each of the last 4 years. It's gotten slower or lower every single year as he's gotten older. It lost 13 points from 19 to 20, 13 points again from 20 to 21, and 8 points from 21 to 22. So the batting average has gotten worse by at least 8 points every single year for the last 3 now. That's probably not going to help you a ton. You can take a guess if you want, but again, they get easier as you get lower.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's fine. This player also has not appeared in more than 123 games once over the last 4 years and turns 30 in the first half of this season. So a lot of injuries.
I mean, I'm thinking Buxton, but I don't think his average has been dropping that much.
Buxton's a great guess. It is not Buxton.
Mondesi also hasn't been playing a lot.
Mondesi's a good guess, but it's not Mondesi.
Okay.
I'll move on to the next one then. Okay. Only once has this guy ever scored more than 81 runs. He scored 94 in 2021. And he's never had more than 65 RBIs either. He had 64 in 2018 as his high.
So 2021 was one of his best years, but his average is sinking. So it wasn't actually.
His average was lower that year than it had been the 2 years previous.
Ooh, okay.
But that was his career high in runs and his one of his higher RBIs. It was not his career high though, but his best runs were that season. So I'm painting a picture of a player who's gotten worse in batting average every year, has not been durable the last 4 years, has never had more than 95 runs and only once had more than 81, and he's never had 65 RBIs a single time. So it's probably not someone hitting in the heart of a lineup.
I mean, there are so many names that are floating through my head. Like I know Jorge Soler, his average has been dropping a lot. He used to be a great player. I think he had over 40 home runs in 1 year. Maybe it was like 38, but I think there's a lot of names, so that's why I'm having trouble. I don't know. Yeah,
I got you. I'll keep going. There's one more kind of harder one, then they get easier again. And a reminder, this is somebody that somebody kept. So like Soler was drafted, for example, or a free agent. This player also has never had more than 20 home runs. They had exactly 20 in 2018. That's the most they've ever hit. So they've never had 21 or more. And while they can run some, they've only got one season ever with more than 18 steals, and it was way back in 2018. So they give you some steals, but they're not a stolen base like super threat either, and they don't have much power.
Man, so this player, what are they providing then? If they don't have average
Somebody kept
anymore, they don't have stolen bases, at least not since 2018. You're not getting a lot of power, it sounds like.
What do they do for you?
Is this like a middling shortstop who's really overrated? Is this like Carlos Correa?
Ooh, good guess. So one of the clues that I'll give you in a second then is I play the deepest position in fantasy this year, and I'm on Roman's team. It is a shortstop. That's the deepest position this year, hitting wise. But it's not Carlos Correa. You want to take another guess before I give my last one? I'm sure playing along at home, Roman's like, I know it. He's yelling at the screen.
Yeah, I'm sure most of
it's his team. It's his team, dude. Yeah. All right, last clue. I've never had more than 30 walks in a single season. Here are my walk totals each season of my career from 2016 on. 13, 13, 30, 15, 10, 22, 14.
Yeah.
So not walking either.
I think it's cheating if I like look on someone's team. I don't remember who his.
Well, you definitely can't look at Roman's team. It's on Roman's team.
Yeah. Okay.
That would definitely be cheating. Yes, that would be.
And I have not cheated, as everyone knows, based on the fact that I've known zero of the answers. I can assure you,
I was honest, man.
I have not cheated.
So I'll have to make this maybe a little bit easier then, because it's probably not as easy as I felt like it might be. You want me to tell you who it is?
Yeah, yeah.
I am Tim Anderson. So not even a terrible keep. I think he's a decent player to have, but he's not amazing at anything.
So I would have never gotten that because I actually thought Tim Anderson's average was pretty consistent. I did not know that it was.
Well, he won a batting title a couple years ago, so even though it's gotten lower, it's still pretty solid.
Okay, yeah. So I would have never.
The first one's a little bit deceptive. Yeah. They're encouraged to not be super easy for you.
Okay, that's a good one. I like it.
I've got a few more we'll play in future weeks with guests.
All right. Yeah, looking forward to redeeming myself against some of the challengers.
Hell yeah.
All right.
Kyle is definitely just throwing this one today so that you guys coming on in the future will be like super confident you might have a chance, and he'll just smoke you. All right, so moving right along then. A fun feature of Zoom is we only get 40 minutes. We're going to have to lose this in a minute, so this may be synced up. Kyle, why don't we start a new Zoom? We'll cover final takeaways. We'll cover our current event stuff, and we'll cover what's the last thing we had? Sorry, looking at my notes right now.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
We'll cover the trades that have been made. There have been trades. We'll cover the trades we've made.
Yeah, we'll be right back after this message.
Here's where we'll put the ad in. Ready, set. Welcome to Manscaped. Shave your pubic hair.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Hey, boss, listen to this Newport commercial I just wrote.
I expect you to write jokes, not commercials.
Oh, but listen to this. Newport refreshes while you smoke, because only Newport combines menthol, fine tobaccos, and a hint of mint. Oh, that's beautiful.
I've always said that about Newport. I also say Newport is more refreshing to begin with, more refreshing all the way.
Hey, I'll write that next week.
Perfect. We're back. So we're all set. I hope you enjoyed that message. And
from our sponsors.
Yeah, looking forward to getting other sponsors on the bandwagon. Again, I'm really hoping that our audience from Colin, rest in peace, Colin, is able to translate to YouTube. I think the usability on YouTube might be a difficult obstacle. I think just people aren't quite as used to watching YouTube videos.
You're right.
So yeah, once we get over that little hurdle, I think this is smooth sailing from here.
I do have Kyle makes a great point. I think it's going to be a little bit of a hiccup early on getting adjusted to this new interface, but I do believe in the long run, there's a decent shot you might want this YouTube app moving forward. Like I could see it sticking around for the next, few years before something cooler replaces it. So hopefully you guys stick with us early on. Now that we're back, though, we're going to hit some of the trades that have already happened because I love how active this league is. We've already had 3 trades happen just in the first 5 days since the draft. And a really fun feature in that, too, this will not always be the case, of course, but me or Kyle is involved in all of them.
No,
so the analysis will probably be a little bit biased.
It'll always be the case.
Actually, yeah, me and Kyle will literally only talk about trades we make. So if you guys trade without one of us, it's not going to get covered.
I'm also a co-commissioner, so I'll just make that the case. Like
Any
we're-
trade that's not us is not going to be allowed to go through. But why
I'll
don't we
just-
start with the very first one? So this
Okay.
was between our defending champion, T. McTaggart, and Kyle. So Kyle gave to Brendan Dansby Swanson, Logan Gilbert, and Josh Hader, and received Julio Urias and Tyro Estrada. Kyle, thoughts from you before I give you my thoughts on it?
Yeah, I won't
Obviously, you
spend,
liked it fine, I think, because you made it.
I won't spend too much time on it. I think this was a pretty even trade. I think this could be one where we both benefit. I panicked a little bit after I heard about Severino's injury shortly after the draft. Early on, I was really hoping that he and Glasnow could be kind of my guys. Glasnow's hurt, of course, Mini DeGrom, and Sevy. With him being hurt, I definitely panicked. So I just wanted to go out, get a top level guy. I mentioned it earlier, but I am pretty serious now about trying to get a starting pitcher or two who are on pretty good teams. So to me, the Dodgers, fit the bill in terms of getting some wins. And I actually just really like Urias too. I think he's a good keeper. And I actually think I like him a little bit more than maybe consensus, just based on some of the stuff I look at. But yeah, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I think I agree with you to a T. We won't always agree to a T, but I think this is probably, in my opinion, close to a 50-50 deal. I think it's interesting too, because I feel like the majority of trades that happen throughout the year in this league probably won't be this exciting in the sense that almost all the guys involved are semi-keepable or definitely keepable. So this is like cornerstones of both teams that are being moved around. Like, I think Logan Gilbert's awesome. I think Julio Urias is awesome. I think they're both definitely keepable. I think maybe in a year or two, if Gilbert just becomes Cy Young, rough look for you. But Gilbert's a great keep. Not quite on Urias' level right now. It makes sense to move up and get Urias. I think that makes a ton of sense, especially like you said, you've got some injuries in your clubhouse. Maybe don't train Severino and the rest of the pitchers in your team quite as hard. They won't break down.
I know.
Dansby Swanson too. Like, I think he's solid. He's very keepable. I don't think he's special, but I think he definitely helps McTaggart out. I think the way you're hitting a setup, though, looking at your team now, it made sense for you to do it. So we won't spend too much more time on this one other than just saying I think it's very reasonable. I think Tyro Estrada is exciting, very interesting player. Are you just super in on Estrada now that the trade's already made, or was he just kind of like a throw-in?
No, he was a throw-in. I actually was not in on Estrada at all. I really only wanted Urias.
Gotcha. Yeah, Estrada
and
will definitely regress, I think, but I think he could still be very useful just because he's going to steal.
I agree, and I like that he's $7. So if he has a great year, I think he's keepable. I have a lot of shortstops, so especially with Volpe, making the opening day, I did think that well, actually at that point I don't think he had, but I was pretty
We
confident.
knew he was probably going to. Yeah,
I was pretty confident. Yeah. So I'm actually a little bit lower on Swanson. I still think he'll be pretty good this year, but yeah, the one thing I will just quickly add is I was really torn to see Gilbert go. Gilbert is still one of my favorites. Yeah, I mean, the whole Seattle team, a lot of people like to talk about who's their other big guy who used to be a prospect. I forget.
The pitcher pitching now?
Yeah, so they have Castillo, they have Gilbert, and their third guy.
No, I'll pull up the rotation real quick.
Anyway, I actually like Gilbert more. It was my point.
I think Gilbert's awesome. I had Gilbert 2 or 3 years ago. I remember you took him from me. So nice job. Kyle just has all the guys I like that I don't have anymore. You mean Robbie Ray? Oh, you mean George Kirby, probably, correct, right?
George Kirby, yeah.
Who also is very solid, yeah.
I couldn't remember his name. A lot of people are now putting Kirby above Gilbert, and I mean, I'm pretty one-dimensional. Like, pitcher list, and a lot of those guys say that Gilbert doesn't really have a lot of pitches. But I think his fastball is elite. He's young. If you look at some of just the intangibles, I think he's a really exciting player. So I think, hopefully he balls out for you, Brendan. Maybe not too much, selfishly. But still, I think
good, not great, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah. But he's definitely one player that I'm still really excited to watch.
Yeah. Well, we won't tolerate pitcher list slander just because we have an affiliation previously with them. That is the reason I personally left pitcher list, is because of the Logan Gilbert slander. That's actually why I left. So I'm with you on that. It was my sticking point.
And they love Kirby, which just makes us hate the guy.
It makes me livid.
So guys, that was just a joke earlier that we couldn't remember his name. That's just a dig at pitcher
It's like
list.
Voldemort. We don't want to say it.
Yep.
All right. Moving right along. Second deal that happens. This one was between Eric and Kyle. This one was also a fairly bigger one, 3 for 2 here. So Kyle gave away Pablo Lopez, Kendall Graveman, and Tyler O'Neill. Shocker, because Kyle likes Tyler O'Neill. For Nolan Arenado, who Kyle apparently doesn't know anything about, though. and Sonny Gray. Kyle, what are your thoughts? And I'm just ripping Kyle, of course.
Yeah.
The blind resumes game isn't designed to be challenging. Sorry, Kyle.
Yeah, so really quick, Tyler O'Neill, Nick and I joke about him a lot because I just started ripping. I did 100 push-ups and I was just ripping curls before
I
the
had a
draft,
hell of a pump for the draft, yeah.
just to try to attract O'Neill my way because I knew Nick was going to
Manifest
be
him.
nipping at my heels. I love Tyler O'Neill. All of the projections that I like to use love Tyler O'Neill. So maybe, who knows what's going to happen. I still love Tyler O'Neill. But yeah, I did need to make a move to get a third baseman. My team structure was pretty weak. And there's this up and coming guy named Arenado.
He could be good for a while, maybe.
Apparently he's like kind of good on defense too. So, that's exciting to buy low on a guy like that. But, yeah, honestly, I don't have much to say. I really liked this trade and I really needed a third baseman. So I was really happy to go through with it.
I think this one's a 55-45 probably. I would have done your side slightly more often. I think it makes complete sense though, generally for Eric too. Eric's team, he took over multiple amazing third basemen with Machado and Arenado both. So even though you have a couple of the best hitters at one of the more shallow positions, it makes sense to move one of them for try to get more keepable guys. Pablo Lopez is awesome. Kendall Graveman's likely to be the closer, or at least one of the high inning relievers if he's not the closer all year for the White Sox. And I agree with Kyle. I like O'Neill a lot. I think he has a chance to be pretty solid this year. So I think you got multiple solid players, a little bit more keeper value because Arenado is getting a little pricey as he gets older. Kyle, I think it makes sense for you. You got a really solid third baseman. Overall, pretty solid deal.
Cool.
Anything else you want to add before we move on?
No, just I'm excited to watch Tyler O'Neill. He's still one of my favorites.
Yeah, his biceps are just ridiculous.
Let's swing it over to the third trade, which actually just happened today pre-draft. We were texting and I actually didn't even know about it. So Nick, how are you feeling about your trade?
I feel like it's very reasonable. It's not often in the decade plus we played this league that I find myself in a position where I feel okay giving up the best player in the trade, which is what I did here. I don't think it's a huge difference, but I think it is the best player in the trade, and it's hard to do that. So I feel like it's pretty fair. It helps my team structure a lot, I think.
And I'm sorry, let me just jump in and recap. The trade was Garrett Cole, Turner for Max Muncy and Austin Riley. So yeah, I agree. Cole's the top player in the pick, but it's an interesting trade. I'll let you go on. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, it's one where a number of factors play into it here. So Mark Missigman and I were talking a little bit about it. He is a Yankees fan, so on top of Garrett Cole being either the first or the second best starting pitcher in baseball, he loves Cole just for homer reasons, which is fine. Again, I have Mullins, for example. Like it's fun to own players in your team. I get that. I think sometimes we just miss that too hard. It's really fun to own players you like. So he loves Cole anyway. He's been asking me about Cole since he joined this league. And I also noticed during the draft that I really wished I had gone almost my number one thing to take away, even though I don't think he's an amazing value, is I'd gone for Jose Ramirez, just because third base is such a shallow position after the top like 8, I think. I mean, I think there's some interesting late round guys. I had like Wilmer Flores and I had Justin Turner, who I think Justin Turner is going to be completely useful. I think actually him going as low as he's going is kind of malpractice. And I would have liked to have kept him, actually. I think he's going to be really good. This is not just I'm trying to unload him. I think he's going to hit probably for a great average in Fenway. He's going to rope laser after the Green Monster. But I also really like Max Muncy. He's a guy I used to keep for 3 or 4 years in a row there before I let him go a couple years ago and he started to get pricier. I love his skill set. I love the Dodgers lineup. Exposure to that's really exciting to me. He plays second and third both, so I can put him all over the diamond. He's not really keepable, I don't think, because he's over $30. I think a big part of the reason, while Cole being 44 this year makes him keepable to me moving forward for another year or two probably, I think Riley being 16 is definitely the better keeper value. So that broke the tie in my head. And I think Riley's not like a significantly worse player or anything. I like Riley a lot. I love having more pieces of Atlanta's lineup too. Own good lineups. That's not rocket science either. So it made sense for both of us, I think. It gives Mystic Man a true ace to go with Zach Wheeler, who's definitely his best pitcher otherwise. Gives him his favorite player and his favorite team. I help my team at third base. I feel like it's interesting when I keep Vlad and Alonso. My biggest takeaway for myself coming out of the draft was I wanted more power. So I think Riley helps me with that. Muncy definitely helps me with that. I feel like we both got a little bit better. It will be hard to replace Garrett Cole.
Yeah, I think you've got power, Nick. That's a pretty good setup. So one quick thing I'll add to the recap, saying very similar things here, but I agree. Cole's the best player in the trade. So typically I like to look for that, but you mentioned this, Riley's by far the best keeper value. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Well, Justin Turner's only $6.
Yeah, I mean that could be a league winner, but a league winner, I should say. But yeah, Riley's the best keeper, and I actually think he's one of the best keepers in the league. And now you have a couple of those guys who present value at under $20 and blue chip power. So you mentioned Vlad, you mentioned Pete Alonso. Uh, Riley is actually one of my favorite guys, and I didn't spend too much time this offseason looking into him because he was a keeper. But he's, I think, consistently, if you look at ADP, somewhere around 20, maybe 22 in ADP amongst hitters. But just using my rankings, which leverage BATX, he's my number 15 guy this year. So I like him a good bit more than consensus. And the fact that he's keepable for under $20. I think he's what, 16. So
Yeah, $16. Yeah.
$21 next year. I think that's just scary, and guys, just stop giving Nick these guys. No,
Keep giving
but
Nick the guys. Yeah.
let me say a little piece on Misigman as well. So we'll do a deep dive on the draft, but Misigman was actually one of my favorite drafts of the entire league. I think
Good job, Mark. I agree.
I think he took the biggest step forward of any team. I think one of his big question marks, I actually was just writing some notes even before this trade happened, was, how are his pitchers going to handle this? Because I like Wheeler, I like Sandoval, I like Green, but if you don't get their top end production like close to their ceiling, he was going to be in some, tough situations. He answered that question. He got Cole. So now, shaping up the other side, he also has Mookie. He has Witt. He has Randy Arozarena. Watch out. Misigman is a tough team now. If his pitchers play to their potential, this is a contender for sure.
Well, I'm sure he won't mind me sharing either. I mean, this trade, I knew he wanted Cole, and I asked him both before the draft and after for this to kickstart a little bit. Once his team was filled out, he was more interested in talking about moving guys. I wanted Witt more than I wanted Riley. Just I think Witt could be an even better long-term play because of the speed he adds. Riley's incredible, I think. I agree with Kyle, where I think I like him as much more than consensus, but he was not willing to move Witt. And you bring up Hunter Green, who is probably who I would have ideally liked to have gotten. He was not willing to entertain Hunter Green either because he wants to get some pitchers. So I don't think I'm throwing him out there too much, but he did a good job, I think, basically deciding what he was getting for me. And I feel like it's a pretty good move for both of us.
Agreed. Well, exciting stuff. Several early trades. So love to see that. And I'm sure it will continue. But only, and
again, we will only cover trades that go through me or Kyle. If you don't share with one of us, we're not going to discuss it. It's not worth talking about.
Well, that's true by default because all trades will go through only you.
It's a requirement. It's a requirement.
And then if we trade between each other, I mean, it's just like a black hole, like the league.
We can just trade the same guys back and forth and analyze it to the end of time.
Perfect. All right. So we do have some other news to cover, Nick. I don't know what you wanted to start out with. I think, the WBC was an interesting development this offseason going into the draft. I think it impacted some guys. I think it hit my guy, Lars Nootbaar, for sure, with, a little bit of extra hype.
Sure.
I did want to call out one of my favorite guys who we talked about a little bit in episode 1, Luis Arias, who is definitely better than Steven Kwan. And I have to add that he's also now a power hitter because he hit 2 homers in one game. So I think he was $10 maybe. So great buy on whoever snagged him.
Yeah, he is really thick looking. And like Kyle said, for those of you at home doing quick math, that projects out to being, if he hits 2 home runs a game, over 300 home runs in the year, which would easily have won the category last year on his own. So it was a pretty good buy for $10.
It's not a bad pace. If he does continue that trend, he might be a league winner.
He could half that pace or even 1/3 of that pace and still literally lead the league in home runs by probably 15, which is pretty impressive. So he's come a long way.
And I'm sorry, I said he was $10. He was $17, but still at his elite power and his batting average, I mean, he could be one of the best players in the league. I did also want to call out one other piece on Arias. We noticed that he's just an interesting looking guy. So I did just want to throw out the idea of this year's Willie Snead Award. I think we're kind of looking to field our options. Who's going to fill that role in this podcast as the Willie Snead Best Smile Award? That's just something we like to look out for.
And please feel free to write it in the mailbag or call in with some suggestions. But I think right now, comments to your point, Arias is one of those guys I think fills that. Daniel Vogelbach, another one I want to float out there. I think he fits the profile of somebody who is conventionally Tyler O'Neill-esque and just like he's very aesthetically pleasing, but also just he rakes the same way Arias rakes. So if you could think of players like that you think probably deserve to be our mascot, that's sort of what we're looking for here.
Yep.
aesthetic guys who rake.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, anything else before we jump to current events, Nick? Anything you want to highlight since last time?
I think I'm probably okay. I mean, I do want to point out Joey Votto was not drafted, and the reason he's not currently owned is he's starting the year in the IL. The only reason I haven't already picked him up is that there were legitimate rumors in Canada. I wish I was doing a bit here, but there's legitimate rumors he may want to be in public office. So if you've seen his TikToks, you know the man can speak publicly. If you've watched him play baseball, you know he handles pressure well. It's not going to shock me at all if he is the prime minister in 10 years, if he's some kind of work up to that in the next 5 months even and just retires before the year's over, which is the only reason I haven't added him. If we get clarity that he will definitely be back before the season starts or even early in the year, because the year starts in a couple days, like I would be in on him. I think he's awesome, but it's just not fun to own unless someone's like a governor or something. You know what I mean? It takes away a roster spot, no matter how incredibly fun he is. So, Brad, wait to pick him up till I get him. I'll trade him to you, but it is worth mentioning he might literally be in the politics.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think he built up the TikTok presence? It's obviously because he's going into politics, right?
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
It's a savvy move. It's a savvy move.
It is.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. So, I mean, that's current events. What is next with all of the Votto rumors? Could it be true? I know we all hope. And I am happy to see the strategy Votto's taking as he eyes his potential place in office. I think we're all tired of, the T-man Trump, like, get out of here. The tactics that he uses. And then on the same end, I mean, the tactics that like Hunter Biden uses, like no pornographic images, just let's stick to TikTok, right? Let's keep it simple.
I think that would probably be the way I would want to handle it too. It's also interesting, actually. I'm looking up his political statements. In the last week, he's also either he has told the Reds or the Reds have told him. I'm not clear who is saying what to who here, but this is a real headline here that they are open to trading him to the Blue Jays because they are in Canada and he is from Canada. Little known fact about Joey Votto, he is Canadian. So I'm not really sure why they would want him since Vlad Jr. is there playing first base and he's like a few years younger than Joey Votto.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But I guess he might go to Canada to play baseball or not to play baseball. So just keeping you guys filled in there. Kyle, Perfect. What about the World Baseball Classic? We touched on it quickly. Do you have any real take here? There were a lot of takes we saw.
Yeah,
a lot of guys have real hot takes. I have a lukewarm take generally, but what is yours?
Yeah, mine's probably lukewarm too. And I guess just a more serious note. I think that it was exciting. I enjoyed it. I think that some of the takes are a little wild. I will throw out a couple of notes. So, you snagged Edwin Diaz, which I was just devastated to see when I woke up. I thought I left a pretty competitive bid, but I think you got him for maybe like 10 fab, something like that.
Like you said, Alfred Morris move would have been the way to go. You did not go that way, so you do not get him.
Yeah. So speaking of Edwin Diaz, his injury came just hopping around celebrating. It was a freak injury. It had nothing to do with the WBC, really. There are some takes where, folks speculate and say, well, they haven't really ramped up to, full speed. It's harder on the body to just exert at full to the full extent in the WBC without that ramp up. I think there could be some validity to that, but I think it's a little bit overhyped. The WBC is a good thing. I think it was exciting for baseball. I enjoyed, I did watch a few games and live, I was actually watching when Turner hit that grand slam. So I think there were just some really exciting moments. Obviously, the end against Japan was you couldn't have written it up better in terms of just the Trout Ohtani matchup. But yeah, I really nothing beyond that. I think some of the injuries were a shame to see, but personally, I would not really attribute them to WBC. In fact, some of the main injuries weren't even really related to WBC at all.
Yeah, it's a great take because it's mostly what I think too. So well done. I want to shout out a different podcast. It's not quite as popular as ours, but Ariel Cohen's Beat the Shift podcast through Van Guy. They talked some about Edwin Diaz's injury when it happened. And I didn't know this, but Ruvain did some medical research onto it. And it's almost impossible that Diaz's ligament actually tore celebrating. It's more than likely that it was hanging by a thread probably, which just means it was almost inevitably probably going to tear no matter what. You can't say definitely would have or not. But if pitching over and over in the World Baseball Classic or last season late in the year did not create it with the tension you're under in those motions, it's almost impossible hopping around celebrating would have caused it. It's likely just a straw that broke the camel's back. in the same way that running in the sprints in the warm-up may have done it. So you hate to see someone get hurt, but it could have happened no matter what. On the same exact team, someone I own in fantasy, Brandon Nimmo, publicly said before the World Baseball Classic, I'm not going because I don't want to risk getting hurt for my team. I want to be on the Mets #1. He sounds big deal this year. I get it. He then also got hurt in spring training and almost missed opening day. He may still not play opening day. So obviously I don't want Brandon Nimmo getting hurt either for a ton of reasons, including that I own him. But it's very clear you can get hurt whether you play in the World Baseball Classic or not. And like Kyle said, it's so exciting. It's so much more fun. It means a ton of these guys to represent their home countries. The strikeout of Trout from Ohtani, the Trey Turner Grand Slam, a lot of these clips, they got more views on Twitter within 24 hours than like the Astros World Series win got since the World Series months ago. So even just outside of America, it's huge. But in America, it's also a huge thing people care about in a way that I don't think some people realize. So I wish me and Kyle had a more like get off our lawn take here, but we kind of feel the other way where it's get off our lawn, old weird takes here, like Chris Russo. You're wrong, Mad Dog. It's awesome for the game.
Oh, don't worry. I'll have plenty of those takes.
We'll try to have some boomer takes moving forward, but we don't have them here. Yeah.
I mean, I'll throw out some takes about, some of the minor league stuff. Nick, we'll really get into it.
My feeling is that as soon as somebody bat flips in like the first week of the season, Kyle's going to be like, what the hell? Just trot around the goddamn bases.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, did you see Realmuto the other day?
He should be suspended for like a month or two. And it's not just because I don't own him. It's just because I think it's so bad for the game to show up like that.
Yep. Agreed. I mean, it's disrespectful. It's a travesty. And there are kids watching. So,
yeah.
I mean, what do you think?
That's a great point.
Yep.
You never know who you're impacting there either. I also saw a headline that said they're going to start watching the bat boys and bat girls more to make sure they're quick since we're trying to have pace of play. So if you are a chubbier bat boy or bat girl this year, it might make sense to do some conditioning now as we approach the start of the season because you may lose your job legitimately in April if you're too slow getting the bats.
I like it. Yeah, I'm realizing there's one problem with the whole video that we're doing now. When we were recording on Callin, I could hide spit takes a little bit better. So this will just be another wrinkle, but it goes to Nick's point that next time when we have guests on, you guys will be on camera and maybe we won't. We're not.
You'll
quite
probably
sure
never
yet.
see us again. This is probably the only time we'll ever be on camera. We're just trying it out to make sure it works for you guys in the future.
Yep. That's how considerate we are.
It's about you guys, not really us. But I think I've gotten through all we're trying to get through tonight, Kyle. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No closing messages. We just really look forward to hearing more from you guys. We love the feedback. We love the mailbag. So Dom, keep it up. Thank you for that. And popular demand rules it all. So current events are back as always. We will continue on that. And we will explore Joey Votto's adventures. Nick, thank you for leading us through this episode. I'm glad that it was interrupted by fewer infiltrating bots.
The Russians didn't get this one yet.
Yeah. So excited to tune in next week and let us know what you guys think.
Yep. And again, we will start likely the very next one we do will be the first guest pod. So we've had some people reach out. A lot of you have reached out. We're going to start scheduling guests to get in here. We will probably in the next one break down each of your teams for a few minutes. So everybody has some content about themselves, content about everybody in the league, and we'll hit other current events, all that good stuff. But please, like Kyle said, I want to reemphasize it, whether it's through Dom or just through texting or emailing, please give us your mailbag. We love answering that good stuff. Other than that, he's Kyle. I'm Nick. We love you. Good night.